Okay. In general, when discussing vestes, versus kavua, versus she'eina kavua, it's important to understand the yesod, what constitutes a vestes, why a vestes is being nikba in a specific form. We know to be kaveya a vestes kavua, you need 3 times chazaka. The reason is when a woman sees in a specific time frame, she sees 3 times, then those 3 times become a chazaka for her, and from that point on, that day or that period or whatever it is becomes that she's muchzak to see blood at that time, and she's asr. Each vesses is different in how do we get to the 3 times and why. It's important to understand the why of each one and to realize, based on understanding the why, then you'll be able to understand why specific chazakas have why specific vestes are defined in a specific way. We know vestes afloga, as Alter Rebbe explains, that the concept of vestes afloga is the amount of time that it takes for the body to refill the blood and let it out again. So you count from when she stops seeing blood until when she starts seeing blood again, whatever amount of time that is a hafloga. And if she has 3 of those, 3 equal periods of that amount of time, or if it grows a little bit or whatever, there's a pattern over there, then we have a chazaka that she is going to see at that time. For aflogas, we know we need 4 times, right? Because you need 4 re'iyos. Why? Because to be able to calculate aflogas, you need 3 sets, 3 aflogas. To be able to get 3 aflogas, you need 4 times, because between the first and the second one, the second and the third, and the third and the fourth. A vesses achodesh is different. A vesses achodesh, we say she sees 3 times on the same day of the month, then she's kaveya vesses for that day. Why is she kaveya vesses for that day? There's different ways of looking at it. Yeah, but we know what the Alter Rebbe says in Kuf Pei Daled, which we learned a while back, that Chushei HaVestes tluim b'malach hachama v'halavane u'bekviyus hachodoshim. The vestes are dependent on the path of the moon, the sun, and kviyus hachodoshim, how the chachamim establish the months. So it's very interesting, just to point out, that the months, okay, now we have a calendar, but when we didn't have a calendar, the months of Chodesh was determined by the Chachamim. And still, let's say Chacham will determine a certain month has 30 days and a certain month has 29 days. Still in all, if the Vesses would be based on 3 dates of the same day in the calendar, that would be considered a Vesses Kavua. And Alter Rebbe explains over here in Kuf Peites, Whatever the Chachamim determine here, that's what the Eibishter runs the world based on what the Chachamim determine, and therefore the date of the month remains the same. Therefore, the date of the month you can make a Vesses Kavua, because that date already becomes set in stone. And the woman, when she's going to see in it, she can make a Vesses Kavua out of it. What's the definition of the Vesses HaChodesh? To be able to determine the Vesses HaChodesh, what causes the period in the Vesses HaChodesh? Yeah. It's a specific day of the month. So that specific day is what causes the period to come. The Yom is Goyim. Not that Rabbi uses that lashon in the Kuntesachan over here in the Kuntesachan and Sif Beis. Yeah, the without the lashon al Rebbe is vadet tzarich lemer shani hasam diyem achoidesh goram liras beidavka v'loy b'yem acher. Specifically, this day of the month is what causes the flow to come. And then in the next month it pushes off one day, so it causes that. It's also connected to the minyan achoidesh. It's also a day, and therefore that day causes it. What is this day of the month cheshbon? So you could say there's a mazel. One of the ways of understanding the simplest way of understanding it is that it has essentially has an element of haflaga, not haflaga like a versus haflaga, but an element haflaga means a distance of time. It has an element of a distance of time. If a woman sees on Hey Nisan, Hey Ir, Hey Sivan, essentially what she's showing is that her body has every time 5 days after the moon is new, she sees it's a haflaga of 5 days from Rosh Chodesh. So that's when she sees blood. So therefore you have 3 times when you have such a call it a haflaga from the Rosh Chodesh, then it becomes a period, and then it becomes a vezes kavua. But it's not that the haflaga is goydem. It's not that the body is goydem it like a regular vezes haflaga. It's that the day of the month is goydem it, or by saying is how long from Rosh Chodesh it happened. And that's why you could look at it in Sif Tes, when the Shulchan Aruch says, Rasa be'echad b'nisan be'echad b'sivan. No, sorry, not Sif Tes, Sif Zayin. That she saw Tezvav Nisan, Tezayin Ir, Yudzayin Sivan. And over there we say she's not Keveya Veses until she sees, according to the Shitta of Shmuel, the Machlokes Rav and Shmuel, whether when it goes one day off, Tezvav Tezayin Yudzayin, whether the first one is counted as a cheshbon or not. And the halacha we take like Shmuel, but the Maskana were machma like bullshit. We'll get to that soon. That according to Shmuel, you need the fourth one, and the lashon of Shulchan Aruch is, why is that? Why don't you count the first one? Kevon she'ein haflagas shavas. The haflagas are not the same. What does the haflagas have to do with Rosh Chodesh? With Vezes Chodesh? If we say the day is goydem, then what's the lashon haflagas over here? So obviously the lashon haflagas means you can understand it to be that it's the amount of time from Rosh Chodesh until the amount of time that passed from Rosh Chodesh until that day.
Why do we need to use the idea of blood? Why can't we just say that's the move
that it's the mazel of the day?
Once you're already being attached to the room.
You could, but the lashon of Shulchan Aruch is she'ein haflagas shavas. So what does that mean?
Haflaga in the house.
Haflaga is that the last month she saw on Tezvav, from Tezvav to Tezayin, from Tezayin to Yudzayin, from Yudzayin to Yudches. Yeah, if it's a Chodesh, Mali Chaser Mali or Chaser Mali Chaser, then the haflagas are never going to be Shabbos anyways. You're not going to be able to look at it based on haflagas. The word haflaga is irrelevant over here. It doesn't help you anything. Because if you're going to look at it like a regular haflaga, that it's the amount of time from the if you want to follow the velt, that's from the day when you have from the beginning of the period, it's still not going to help you anything. If you want to say it's from the end of the period, it's also definitely not going to help you anything because not every time is going to be the same. It's not always going to be 5 days until she stops seeing blood, 5, 6 days, whatever it is. And to say that it's because how many days pass between the months also doesn't work because you have Mali Chaser, so you're not going to have the same exact amount of time. So obviously the haflag over here has to have something to do with the mahalach of the moon, let's say from when the moon became fresh, or whichever way you want to do it. It could be if she sees on Tezayin, Yudzayin, Yudches, you could look at it, okay, the aflog is that she sees that it's one day after, when the moon starts shrinking, she starts seeing blood. Or maybe 2 days after the moon starts shrinking, she starts seeing blood. Whichever way in Malach HaLavana you want to attach it to. But if it's a chodesh, you're going to have to attach it to Malach HaLavana and to Kviyos of Bezdin, because otherwise you don't have any other way to determine. You can't say that it's a haflaga in the traditional sense of a haflaga. So therefore, when you have a vesis adilug, that you have tezvav tezayin yudzayin, then you're not then to be able to determine a vesis according to Shmuel, we don't look at the date of the month. What we look at is at the dilug, the amount of skips that there are. How much skips, how much additional there is, the dilug. So there's only 2 dilugim in 3 re'iyos. Same as in aflagas, will be only 2 aflagas in 3 re'iyos. So you need a 4th one. But according to Rav, it has to do with the date, the day itself is goyim. And therefore you'll say the first month, the amount of time that it went from a chodesh to there was 15 days, and the second month was 16 days, and the third month was 17 days. So she was already kaviyat. And therefore, that's the shit of Rav. Now the majority of the Rishonim pass like Shmuel. Allah is essentially like Shmuel, but it says that you have to be machmir like the shita of Rav. What does that mean? Lahachmir, you can't be makel. Lahachmir would mean that in the 4th she would cease tezvav, tezayin, yudzayin, comes the 4th month. So according to Shmuel, she has to be chodesh yudzayin. Why does she have to be chodesh yudzayin? Because she doesn't have veses kavua yet. She has to be chodesh for the day of the month in the previous month. And then she will be chodesh either yudzayin or yudches for ein beinanis. Or you test whichever shit you want to do. And so you're going to end up with one of them. 30 days, 31 days. Yeah? So you have to be chodesh to those days. And mitzat sheni, you also have to be machmer like Rav. You have to be chodesh. Lu yitzur, eine beinus, and a chodesh should be, eine vest and chodesh should be the same day, both bein yudzayin. You still have to be chodesh for yitches, because according to Rav, she was already keveya veses. Yeah, so now, in the next seif, when she sees in a form of dilug that repeats itself 3 times, whether it is, the Rebbe says, whether it's 3 sets of 3 or 3 sets of 2 or 3 sets of 4, it doesn't make a difference, whichever way it's going to be. She's keveya that veses of repetitive veses, the pattern. So she says, Vav Tazayin Zayin, Vav Tazayin Zayin, Vav Tazayin Zayin. So from now on, the veses kavua is going to be Tezvav the 1st month, Tazayin the 2nd month, Yizayin the 3rd month. And you're not going to have, over here, you don't say that, why is there no veses? Why is there veses kavua over here? L'chayra, according to Shmuel, you need 4 times to make a dilug. It's no, because over here you found a different pattern. The other pattern is that it repeated itself 3 times. If it only repeats itself 2 times, it's not going to be enough to make a pattern. But if it repeated itself 3 times, you have enough to make a pattern. Any form of pattern you have which repeats itself 3 times, you could connect it to one of the forms, either that you could say that it's because the amount of time it took for the blood to regenerate, or because the amount of time from when the chachamim are kever shchedesh, or from the amount, or the mahalach of the chama, the mahalach of the lavana, whatever, whichever one you're going to determine. Once you have a pattern of 3, whether it's 3 days of the month, or 3 dates on the calendar, or 3 periods of skipping, or 1 additional day, or 1 Shavua, or 2 days, or 2 aflogas, or 1 afloga, that adds, then it's going to be like that. there is a, just as a side point, there is an interesting question. If a woman sees Yud Zayin, Tazayin, Tazvav, Yudalit, is she keveya a reverse versus a flaga, versus a chodesh, versus a dilug? I'm saying a reverse versus a dilug. She's not skipping. She's going back a day every time. So it's interesting. Machlekes achreinim. I don't remember the names of the shittas now. Does it work or not?
Doesn't Shach say it's Pashat, yeah?
Huh?
Doesn't Shach say it's Pashat, yeah? Kol Masha Shara.
Yeah, but the question is something which doesn't make sense according to common sense. Because if you're going to say she's a Veses Kavua, what's going to happen is that in no, saying is Luyitzur. Veses Kavua means that this woman right now we established that she has a path that's a steady path. So if she sees Yud Zayin, Tazayin, Tazvav, Yudalad, what's going to be is that in 1 year from now, she's going to have a new period every day. Which doesn't make sense. At some point, it's going to stop. If you want to say that it expands further, that could be. Sometimes it could go a little bit longer, whatever it is. What? What do you mean jump on?
She sees Cafe. You're talking about Yem Chedesh or Flaga?
So if she sees every month she sees 1 day earlier.
Same thing with the Dilug of Alma. Dilug of Alma, eventually she's starting to treat it 40 days or 50 days.
If what?
Even a Dilug of Alma, 1 day forward. You see the same question. Eventually she's going to start having back really long breaks.
Well, you have, but at least there you have a Shiur that the woman could see in 2 months, once in 2 months. So it's not.
No, then it becomes 6 months.
Huh?
Then it becomes 6 months. Yeah.
And let me tell you something, that there are women who have irregular periods, and sometimes they're not going to see a period for a few months. It's irregular. It's not a Veses Kavua, but just telling you, health-wise, it will be more common to see a woman. It's percentage-wise. You're still talking about a very small percentage of women, a minute percentage that have very long periods. But you're still going to have it makes more sense to have a scenario where a woman sees longer than a woman to have a period every morning. That doesn't make sense. Right? But some people say, well, the Shulchan Aruch says, the Shach says, or any form of pattern makes it a kavua. And some say, no, the pattern has to make sense, and if it's not written in the Shulchan Aruch, that pattern is not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch, then we don't follow it. That's just a side point. I'm not going to tell you the Maisa how it is today. Today we are choishish. There will be choishish to Veses Kavua and such. If the pattern goes back, there's certain a lot of Rabbanim will follow that opinion because the Shach says, because the Chayim say that you do follow any form of pattern will do it. So if she sees, let's say, Flogus, she sees 50, 48, 46, the next 44, the next month she's going to be choishish 42, 40, al zeh derech weiter. So now, when she sees these, that she sees three times, and then you have the scenarios of what's called Veses Asirug. Veses Asirug is a little bit more complicated. She sees, a regular woman sees once a month. So if you have a Veses, which is a few days more than a month, a few days less than a month, it's within range of normal female behavior. Yeah, so it's going to be within. But what happens if a woman sees once every 2 months? So she sees one Rosh Chodesh and she skips. And she sees another Rosh Chodesh and she skips. And there's another Rosh Chodesh. And then it becomes a question, will she keveya for those times or not? So the Veses Asirug is essentially based not on when she did see, but more on when she didn't see. Right? So therefore, the Re'iyah Harishayna min Aminya Shulchan Aruch says Divrei HaKollel, which happens to be not everybody agrees with that statement, but Divrei HaKollel. that she sees one Rosh Chodesh and she skips one, and she sees another one, she skips one, and she sees another one, then she already doesn't have to be Chodesh until she skips one Rosh Chodesh, and the fourth, that means the 8th Rosh Chodesh of the set. That's the next time she has to be Chodesh. And the reason for it is because, now Tereba right away explains, says, why is it Lakuli Alma? Because according to everyone, since she sees on the first day of the month, so it's a day of a month Kviyas. Elamai, she doesn't see the second one. So we look and we say, okay, she sees on this month. So there's the day of the month, essentially what's goyrem the verses. It's not a shaila of aflogen. It's not a shaila of dilug. It's not that it's adding a day every month. Rather, we have a clear pattern over here that she sees on this specific day of the month, and she does not see on the next specific day of the month. She does not see. She sees the specific day of every second month. Because her body needs to have a cycle of having the moon go 2 times instead of 1 time. Everybody else needs it based on the moon going 1 time. For her, it goes based on the moon going 2 times. And that's how her body reacts to having a period. So she's having on the Rosh Chodesh, so she's keveya to that specific way. However, the Prisha holds that it's not the Kuli Alma. The Prisha holds that when it comes to verses Asiroog, the same logic that you have with Rav, and the same achloikus of Rav and Shmuel, that do you count is the first Re'iyah min a minyan or not, or do you have to calculate you have to have 40 years to make such a determination? Same applies when it comes to this verses Asiroog. And absolutely, Taz also mentions it in Siftas. And therefore, you have it goes based on the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel, and therefore, according to Shmuel, technically for verses Asiroog, you would need 4 times. So the Alter Rebbe says that being that we already explained Yesh Lahachmer Kedivrei Shneim when it comes to the machlekes, so it seems like Alter Rebbe here also said that you're going to have to be machmer kedas shneim in this scenario, even though it's not what the Shulchan Aruch says. But it's not that's what's mashma from Alter Rebbe here. The way he says is a prisha kosa v'svar rishon shebesiv zayin bin agim udlugim ochnam elakav v'esiruga ashir ba'al v'tishrei v'nisbal el sheyesh lahachmir kedivrei shneim. It's the lashon of the Alter Rebbe.
Is this out there in Shach and Smash? Otherwise, it's not taking the
No, it's not. Yes, no. The Alter Rebbe in the Kunter Sachren in second. Alter Rebbe Kunter Sachren discusses what the crazy place he asks that l'chayre, how can you have for the Prisha. Alter Rebbe says that you can't bring. He's asking a question. He's not saying that Prisha is wrong. He just says what the crazy tries to. With the Prisha, in this case, you would die from the Taz the same way.
But that has himself this question. Because
he says himself, yeah.
I'm saying, why would
That's what he says. If you have to revach,
no, he said that.
So when it comes to when you have in this scenario, if you have a veses Asiroog, if you have that it jumps back and forth, we say that the first one is min minyan. That's because we look at the day of the month is what's going on it, but the day of and we're not looking at the amount of time that passes between them. We're going to say we need 3 aflogas to determine it. Rather, the day of the month is what's goydem it. Now, when it comes to the vestas, which are not vestas chodesh and vestas afloga, standard vestas chodesh, vestas afloga, but rather vestas siruga and vestas hadilug, you're not chodesh for them on the next month if only you see 1 or 2 days. And you follow the same logic that we go until now. To determine a vestas, to determine a chashash, to determine vestas kavua, we say you need a chazaka. At that point, that woman becomes muchzik that on this specific day she's going to see, and not on other days. So she is kosher on all the other days, and on this specific day she has an established chazaka that she's going to see blood, and that's why at that day she has to be choishish for seeing dam. But if it's a vesas she'eina kavua, so what's the chashash that we have over here? From one point, it's weaker than a vesas kavua, because the vesas kavua, this woman already established a reisa for this specific day. Vesas she'eina kavua, she didn't establish any reisa for this specific day. Elamai, we say she doesn't have vesas kavua. We don't know when she's going to see. The Chachamim have izatim as bnei Yisrael that you have to establish that there should not be that you have to be careful when it comes to vestas. So therefore, the Chachamim were masakin that you have to be the chashash and the vestas she'eina kavua has to be chodesh to specific vestas. But that only applies when there is a reason to think that the next month is going to be a vestas on this time. So, what are the common ones? When a woman sees on a specific day, so we say Oina Beinis, we already explained, has nothing to do with this specific woman. Oina Beinis is the chashash of Oina Beinis has nothing to do with a specific woman. It's a general chashash. The majority of women see once in 30 days, or 31 days according to after 30 days. So therefore, she is part of, since she does not have a chazaka which takes her out of the roiv, so she is part of the roiv, so she has to do the minutes. But the other chashashas, the vesas chodesh and the vesas chodesh and vesas afloga, we say she saw last time this day of the month. She saw last time this amount of time between the periods, between the end of the period, beginning of the period. So therefore, since it's not a kavua, this month we're going to have that specific amount of time to check it, to see, maybe since last month it was done on this day, maybe this month is going to come on this day also. But when it's something which is not so common, like a dilug or a sirug, there's no reason to come and say, because last month she saw a day later than the month before it, so this month she's also going to see a day later than the month that passed. Because that is not something which is a standard thing. To see, that's, or a siruv, being that she did not see 1 month, does that mean that from now on we have to be choishish that she's not going to see a specific time? No. As long as we follow the standard vestas that are standard to see for this specific woman, whatever standard it is, chodesh and afloga. Therefore, all the other ones, whether it's sirug or whether it is afloga, we're not chodesh for them until these aflogas become established. Until these vestas become established. Once they become established, once they become a chazaka, then you have to keep them. Then they get put onto the calendar. You become chodesh for those specific ones.
That's not the day. Alternate days use it differently. Well, that's
I don't see why it's not the same as what I said. So, I explain to you a general thing, not why you're not choishish to these ones. He explains that according to the Ravid, you see that the other vestis is you have to be choishish because maybe she's going to be kaveh on that specific day, and vestis adilug you have to be choishish only once you see 3 times, and you matter everything. But why? The question is, why are you not choishish to these ones? What's the reason?
Well, reading the word now, I don't. You don't want to make it more common. The chilas should not be more common than the tzedek.
In Tchilasi, you're choishish for.
You think if you would be choishish for, if you assume that a deal is going to happen,
Yeah.
then you'd be choishish for extra days that the sofa, once after Kavod, you wouldn't have to choishish. Once Kavod, you only choishish for that.
And the Shah Vestas, if it becomes Kavoy also choishish, until it becomes Kavoy also choishish the same way. When it's a standard from the more common Vestas, when you see you have to be choishish for it because that's something which is reasonable that it will become part of a vesicle, right? So therefore, you have to be choishish for it. Something which is not so common, you don't have to be choishish that's going to become part of a vesicle. First words is So I understood it, but I might be wrong. So I understood it, but I think again, I might be wrong. What I understood it is that the Shah versus Yesh Min Adin לא חושב בתחילוסי כשם עתיק בו לא יום זה לבס ותהיה אסור בו יחכמים תחילוסי כסייפוי. The first regular vestis, we have a reason to be choishish, but maybe this date is going to form part of a pattern and become a vestis kavua, but something which is not so common. והדילוג כשתקבענו הוא כל יום הראשון, וחושב שלא יום תסבוב ותזין, אלא יתחז יתץ וחוף וחוף ומעלו, גם המלכים וניטורים. אז לכן קוראים לכן היח יהיה תחיל הסבסס, חומר מסויפה. Yeah, I guess the beginning of the verses becomes more strict, and you can't say that the beginning of it, when it's not kavua, she has to see much more days than at the end of it. I hear what you're saying. Say it. Now, the next second. There's something else I wanted to say, but it's not clear in my head now. So I'm going to stop now. We'll be mamshich a different time. Sorry for a short share.